Hello. Hello. Good evening. Welcome to SCI-Arc for the last lecture of the Butterfly series, and certainly of the... so it's not the last of the millennium. Hello? Okay. It's okay now? Hello? Okay. So good evening, sorry. Thank you. Can't even see you. Welcome to SCI-Arc for the last lecture of the Butterfly series, and certainly of the millennium, actually. My name is Olivier Touraine, and I'm teaching here at SCI-Arc, and it's my pleasurable duty today to introduce our guest, Wenders. Now I get it. First, I would like to thank Mr. Wenders for accepting our invitation, especially in this very tiring period of concluding a film. It is not that often that he gives a lecture, and I guess, I might be wrong, it is the first time in a school of architecture. I would like to thank as well all the people who have worked to make this event possible and spent a kind of frantic last 24 hours. It is not every day that a school of architecture opens its doors to somebody who is not part of the micro world of architecture. But somehow the work that Mr. Wenders has achieved is by far the most influential of any filmmaker for many architects and many of us. On a personal note, I should mention my work with Jean Nouvel and his constant reference to Mr. Wenders' work. Born in 1945 in Düsseldorf, Germany, Mr. Wenders first studied medicine and philosophy before finding his vocation in film, which he studied in Munich. His resume is impressive. 10 short films, 22 feature films, photography and painting exhibitions, and books about his work. Many awards, including a Golden Palm in Cannes for Paris, Texas, a prize for Best Director in Cannes for Wings of Desire, and a Golden Lion Prize in Venice for The State of Things. Most importantly, Mr. Wenders has been making movies that continue to impact the history of cinema and the shape of cities. Alice in the Cities, The State of Things, Paris, Texas, Tokyo Ga, Wings of Desire, Notebook on City Enclosures, one of my favorites, Until the End of the World, Far Away So Close, and The End of Violence. Many evoke the monumentality of the everyday in the urban context. Mr. Wenders' cities are poetic manifestations of asphalt, freeways, lights and billboards, and the subsequent aesthetic systems which result. Please join me in welcoming Wim Wenders. Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me well? Even louder. When I agreed to this evening half a year ago, I thought I'd be well rested. The movie was in the can, finished, mixed, and this was going to be a vacation here. You see one hell of a tired filmmaker in front of you. Last night we worked until 3, and the nights before only up to 2. So I had to prepare myself sort of in between the 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there over the last week. So I'm afraid some of it we're going to have to wing it, which is good because that's connected to the theme, the butterfly. And if I admit I have a few in my stomach, so much the better. I want to make two quick remarks first. First of all, I'd like you to feel free to interrupt with questions. And that could either be a direct question or maybe a piece of paper, because in between we're going to have some film clips, and that might sometimes be a good occasion to slip a piece of paper here. We'll see if that works out. And the second remark, I really speak only for myself here. I'm not representing the art, craft, or industry or filmmaking, just myself. Other filmmakers would certainly see some of the subjects I'm going to talk about very, very differently. So keep that in mind, especially when I'm going to generalize, as if I was speaking for the movies in general. I tend to do that. So don't take it seriously. I want to hit you with two theories. First, theory A. Architecture and film have nothing in common. You, the architect, or let's say the hopeful architects, you build something real in stone, concrete, glass, metal, and wood. Some of you might maybe one day build a movie theater, or probably a Cineplex. And we, I generalize already, filmmakers, we build fantasies in celluloid, and we use your buildings and your cities as backdrops and locations. That's theory one, that's the end of the evening. The other one goes, architecture and film have everything in common. We all, you and me, we deal with space and time. Light sculpts your work as well as mine. We are interested, or very interested in people, and we serve people. And you and me, we create the room for people's experiences. As you can imagine, I wasn't really torn in which direction to concentrate my effort tonight. Let's say we go for the latter theory. So, means we're in the same business. To make that even clearer, what I mean, you and me, we're in the business of stories and storytelling. Well, that's not exactly why you're studying at the Southern California Institute of Architecture, I suppose. Some of you might think he's talking at the wrong school. But I'm not kidding. You are in the storytelling business with me. And of course, I mean stories in a very broad sense. I mean it in its widest sense, which is making sense. Like a kid, when he goes to sleep in the evening and wants to hear a story, that's story in its widest sense, because you might have noticed, those of you who are parents or who remember, doesn't matter what you're telling. Doesn't really matter at all. What matters is it's a story. It makes sense. It creates context. So we're trying, you and me, to make sense of experiences and to make sense of history by creating a supportive structure for those. I would have had an easier time to go through that here in my own language, because in German, Geschichte is the word for both story and history. There's typical, of course, it's not her story, it's his story in English. But in German it's the same word, which sometimes makes it easier for me to understand the context. And in English I always have to say history or story, and it bothers me because I really think it's the same. So any house, already I'm talking about your business instead of mine. Any house is the everyday script for the family living there, and it's, strangely enough, I don't know that, it's both the script and the location. For the child growing up, that house is the movie of its childhood, right? The little one over there. It's the pattern of his entire experiences, and it's the window and the door to the world. The house and its surrounding, of course, builds the character, not unlike at all to the dreams and hopes that are created by that child's favorite movie, which of course it knows by heart, like the house. The city around is the extension of these patterns, and the city could be seen as the epic form and the narrative structure for the little scenes that play in the house. Some of these houses, of course, don't exist yet. I was amazed that imagining and building a house that you in your profession use an approach very similar to filmmaking when you're preparing. I didn't know about that. I was privileged to walk through the Bilbao Museum of Frank Gehry's way before it was finished in his office on his computer. And I was amazed that it was exactly like storyboarding a movie or making a computer simulation of a highly difficult scene. It's the same approach. But I'm drifting off, sorry. That wasn't foreseen here. So, we live in houses and cities, and they're erected in certain landscapes, and these places determine how we grow up and how we feel, how we think, how we communicate. And they have an impact, an immediate impact on our existence, our habits, our perception, and our taste. And again, if I might say so, it's like movies. Only, I grant you that, more so. Architecture and the overall appearance of cities seem to be very closely linked to the character of the people living there. You couldn't really imagine a German in a Japanese house with paper doors. Because they built for eternity, of course, the Germans. And you couldn't really see Tokyo or Osaka populated by my countrymen, just as well as the city where I'm from, Berlin. If you get into it a little bit, you'll realize it could never, ever be an American city. Not only because, as an architect, you were not allowed to build skyscrapers. I mean, I couldn't imagine an American city where it's forbidden to go over 6 floors. It's amazing. The English wouldn't feel at home in Italian houses. I watched that, and I can confirm that. While Paris tells you really all you need to know about the French and their savoir-vivre, and London, if you've ever been there, is an open book to the British psyche. I don't want to put anybody down. But I'm coming to my point. As a traveler, you tend to see these things more clearly than those people who live their everyday life in these places. and that's my other profession, as a filmmaker and traveler, I've always been inspired by places. I could even go further. Places have called most of my films into being. And the only interest of most of my films was to explore and understand a certain place and find out how the people lived there. Like, Buena Vista Social Club, Havana, my own city of Berlin, which I revisited after a long absence, so I was like a stranger. Lisbon, where I shot twice, Los Angeles, where I shot 3 times, Tokyo. These films started with a desire to take place in a certain city and to take place in houses that were the result of that city, or that translated the essence, whatever you call it, of that city. So I would even go further. These places started the very desire that made these films happen. You could say places commissioned my movies. So here's my main theory of the day up front, so you can digest it and tell me that I'm crazy while I'm still here. Places have stories to tell. Places have their stories. They're not just locations and backdrops. They're not exchangeable. They're sometimes the leading parts, and of course they never get the credit. There are actors, supporting actors, screenwriters. They're even responsible for the lighting and the soundtrack and the colors. Of course they don't have agents. There's no agents for places. Although, don't tell anybody. In this city, they come up with that. So the stories of places are hidden because they are public domain. Most places want these stories to be told. They are waiting for someone to tell them, and they're waiting for you or me. They're waiting for the architect or the filmmaker. Movies can bring these stories into the open and uncover them, and architecture, I believe, does the very same. I don't want to sound so positive, because both films and architecture can also just do the opposite. They can bury stories, they can prevent experiences, and they can dullen every emotion. You and me, your profession and mine, we can make places also invisible. But maybe we talk about that later. I'm really more into making things visible and livable, and you see, again, we have a lot in common. Let me start showing maybe a movie. And of course, the film pieces I want to show you deal with places and stories.
I don't believe this. I'm sitting in a fucking mobile home, about to get blown away, maybe. And I'm sitting here with a fucking deaf-mute German.
Make it louder.
I tell you, I never thought I'd live to see the day when I'd be working with a German director, right? A Jew from Newark, New Jersey, and a German picked up at the fucking Chateau Montmartre. What the fuck are you and I doing with each other, huh? Huh? You should have been there, Friedrich. I tried to show dailies to these two loan sharks. And there's Santoni. He's sitting there. And this big guy, Stein, must weigh 400 pounds. He looked at me like I was fucking crazy, you know? I mean, he thought it was a joke. Couldn't believe it. He said, what's the matter with the color? What's the matter with the color? It looks black and white. It looks black and white. I said, it is black and white. Oh, you know? In a funny way, those fucking sharks sitting in that screening room, they're not crazy. It's you and me. That's who's crazy. They're looking for a fucking story. They're not looking to kill me. They wanted a fucking story. They had 100 grand they were willing to shell out if I had a story. And I told them I had a story. It's about survival. We're all trying to survive, right? The survivors. If I would have shot that same film with an American director and an American cast in color, I'm sitting on top of the world in 6 months. You know that? The same story. All you had to do is just... Gotta have a story, Friedrich. Same old story I keep telling you. Without a story, you're dead. You can't build a movie without a story. You ever try building a house without walls? It's the same. You can't build a house without walls. A movie's gotta have walls, Friedrich. It's gotta have walls. You know?
Why walls? The space between the characters can carry the load.
No, you're
Space
talking about
between people.
You're talking about reality. Fuck reality, Friedrich. When are you gonna wake up? Huh? Cinema is not about life going by. People don't want to see that. Huh? Hollywood, Hollywood. Never been a place people had it so good like Hollywood.
I made 10 movies, you know, Gordon.
What do you do with your days, my friend? What do you do with your days? What do you do with your days, my friend, in Hollywood?
There were several times.
In Hollywood.
The same story I was saying.
What do you do with your nights, my friend? What do you do with your nights? What do you do with your nights, my friend, in
the beginning
Hollywood?
it was easy. Because I just went from shot to shot.
Hollywood, Hollywood, never been a place people had it so good like Hollywood. Like Hollywood. What do you do with your wife, my friend? What do you do with your wife?
I'm scared.
What do you do with your wife, my friend, in Hollywood?
Now I know how to tell stories. And relentlessly.
What do you do with your life, my friend? What do you do with your life?
As the
What do
story
you do with your
comes
life,
in,
my friend, in Hollywood?
life sneaks out.
In Hollywood. Hollywood, Hollywood, never been a place people had it so good like Hollywood. Like Hollywood. What did they do to your head, my friend? What did they do to your head? What did they do to your head, my friend, in Hollywood? In Hollywood.
Everything gets pressured into images.
When did you learn you were dead, my friend? When did you learn you were dead? When did you learn you were dead, my friend, in Hollywood? In Hollywood.
Death.
Hollywood,
That's all stories
Hollywood,
can
never
carry.
been a place people had it so good like Hollywood.
All stories are about death.
Like Hollywood. Like Hollywood. Like
Todesboten.
Death, Friedrich. That's what it's all about. It's the biggest story in the world. Second best only to love stories.
Didn't want to just show you short glimpses because I thought it was important to show you sometimes the context. And of course what I was most interested to show you was that discussion of the producer who says you need the walls and the director who says you need the space between the characters to carry your story. And the producer saying you need the walls, can't tell a story without the walls. And as it goes on, the producer is killed. And when I had him killed, because I thought he was so wrong, he needed to be killed. As a second thought, we extended the scene and had the director killed as well. Because I couldn't help it, I thought he was also wrong. And just building with a space, that didn't seem to work. So actually they were both wrong, but I'm going to come back to that movie somehow. Maybe just as a side subject, I just realized you could see if you wanted to, oh no, it's a scene where we just stopped. And the scene immediately before takes place at Tiny Nailers. And then the mobile home drives by Schwab's pharmacy, twice by the way, but that is only for those who really look. And I just want to mention that because in movies some places can survive. It's not really my theme tonight, but it's something that I'm sometimes very proud of, that in a movie some house or building, or even sometimes the whole city, can remain. Like the city of Berlin that we filmed in Wings of Desire does not exist anymore. There's another city now called Berlin, but it's not that city anymore, and I'm really happy that I made a film that sort of kept that city. Buena Vista Social Club, that some of you might have seen, shows the city of Havana, and I'm very sure that in a few years that city will not exist anymore, at least not as the city that is now. I shot a scene in my first film, the goalie's anxiety at the penalty kick, because there was a beautiful house in Vienna. Wittgenstein lived in it, and it was supposed to be torn off. Well, so let's stay though in America and continue to look at the context of stories and places. And I would like to show you two, and I hope in the end I can make sense of it all. I just don't like to talk during the excerpt. I don't think it's sort of boring, and I don't want to point with my laser pointer either, so so you just have to live with the movie clips as they are, and I hope over there you have a vague impression of what's happening. I'm sorry that you see it so bad. These people were smarter here. So I want to show you two film clips. York, they both deal with arriving in Los Angeles, and they both in a way deal with a story coming out of buildings and places. You think you're ready to start? Good.
I remember now.
What?
Bring it up.
Why about that land?
Oh, why?
Well, Mama once told me that that's where she and Daddy first made love.
Oh, in Paris, Texas?
Yeah,
She told you that?
yeah. So, I figured that that's where I began. I mean, me, Travis Clay Henderson. They named me that. I started out there.
Paris, Texas?
Yeah.
So you think maybe you were conceived there?
Yeah.
Well, you could be right, Travis.
Daddy always had a joke about it.
What was the joke?
He would introduce Mama as the girl he met in Paris. And then he'd wait before he said Texas till everybody thought that he meant. He would wait before he said Texas till everybody thought, after everybody thought he was talking about Paris, France. He always laughed real hard about it. So you live in Los Angeles, huh?
Yeah, well, we live in the suburbs, but I got my business in town.
Oh, yeah, what's your business?
I make billboard signs for advertising.
Oh, yeah? Well, you're the one who makes those, huh? I love those. Some of them are beautiful.
I'm not the only one in the world that makes them, Trav. Trav, this way. Nice, huh? Just been in here 3 months. I really like it, but I took a beating on the financing, I'll tell you. Like everybody else nowadays, I guess.
Okay. I realized I was pretty stupid because I had these two scenes here about arriving in Los Angeles, and now Jörg needs 20 seconds to put in the other one. I have nothing to say in between. You ready? Wow.
Hello, Bessie.
Hello, Friedrich. Welcome home.
Let's not call this home. Where is everybody?
Gordon's out of town,
Well,
and
if he went to Portugal, he certainly never arrived.
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
I don't know. You know how Gordon is.
Do I? I didn't think he had it in him to leave us stranded in Portugal with no film, no money.
I know, Friedrich. I know.
Listen, Bessie, I came all the way from Lisbon to speak to Gordon. The crew is sitting there without film, without getting paid. They'd like to know what's going on. If we can finish the picture, and so would I.
Okay, Jaak. Thanks. You can tell already that I like cars and that I thought a city with so many parking lots should be filmed from above. And I always wonder why in these movies, when they have these car chases, that they don't just show it from above so you can see how easy it is to shake anybody. I mean, especially in Los Angeles, if you know how to go around on the parking lots. You probably saw my favorite movie theater shortly in between, the Cinerama Dome. And another reason why we shot that scene there. And I really want to first show you the next one before we sort of come to some conclusion. I have another favorite place in Los Angeles, and I want to bother you a little more with Los Angeles, after all. And the other place is the observatory. I love to go running up there. Jörg, that's the last one. That's not that one. And that is number 3. Let's start with the first one, huh? It's the observatory. First of all, because I think those hills are really fantastic. And I go running there every day. Second, Nicholas Ray shot Rebel Without the Chorus there. And third, I really think the observatory is a fantastic piece of architecture. So the very desire to shoot at, beneath, and in the observatory, that's not the one either. Should be the very first, huh? The very desire to shoot in and at the observatory really made that whole entire story happen. Because the name of the place alone, observatory, and that's the truth, led to us thinking, what about making a movie where you observe the city from the observatory? Now, I know you're meant to look at the stars, but I always felt like the word observatory and observation because it's lying on the hill over the city, I couldn't help linking it to looking down at the city. So the place itself, being called the observatory, wrote our script. And I just wanted to show that in these 3 little clips, beginning, middle, and end of the film. Yeah, that is in the opening. He plays a character who observes the city from within the observatory, and he has all these cameras all over the place, and he can almost simultaneously watch every square, place, street, alley, bank, whatever in the city. Of course, he works for the FBI. That's not really the subject. And I show you a second part. Oh, you're so fast, Jörg. Fabulous.
You're doing great, Ray. You're getting it all going. That maid working out okay?
Yeah, fine.
It's hard to get good help these days. Your part should be done in a couple of months. Then the operators will take over.
That would be good.
Just wanted to touch base. Tell you we're all very happy with your work. Country's grateful and all that. If we could get this thing fully operational soon, it'll be an awesome tool. Cut down on crime response time by 200%. Accuracy, eyewitness evidence. Could mean the end of violence as we know it.
That would be good.
Of course, if there was just one little tiny infinitesimal leak before Congress approved it, we'd have to wipe the whole thing out. Everything down the drain. Poof. Well, they'd crucify all of us. Not a perfect system.
I've worked in projects before that went popular with the public.
You're not in NASA anymore, Toto. You're not watching the heavens from Earth. That's easy. You're watching Earth from the heavens. That's messier. In a system like this, there's the chance for abuse. If you see anything that I miss, any misuse, anything strange, you let me know, right?
I'm a computer scientist. This is Hollywood. What's not strange?
That horse had a good instinct. So the third part of the story, and as the story deals with violence, the very subject of the story also sort of was born out of the city of Los Angeles, insofar as it is the city that really produces, manufactures, and creates this product, violence, for the entire world. You ready with the third one? Beautiful. That's my favorite.
Nothing like it, if we could see it.
Hey.
Are you Doc?
Yeah. So you, Don't move. Oh, God, I can shoot anybody.
Thank you, York. Yeah. In a way, that place halfway between the city and the observatory, with that little fountain and the sort of strange totem and these two trees standing there. That place is really, that place wrote, conceived, and made the movie End of Violence come into being. So I wanted to give it credit here on this moment because, as I said, they never do. And you might already have guessed that I like this city very much, and I really want to talk about that at the end. Jörg, tell me when you're ready with shoes. But it's mainly that why I like it so much and why I keep shooting in it is that you can so entirely dream yourself into it. I don't think there's any city more open to be filled with what you want to fill it with. Every other city comes already with something that it offers you. Los Angeles offers nothing, and I love that for movies. Do you have shoes? Okay, doesn't matter. Shoes is an excerpt from Paris, Texas again, and it deals a lot with the valley. The valley is not given credit enough for being an important part of the city, and it's one of the few places I've ever been to where you can see planes land and they're landing under you. And when I saw that the first time, I thought, and that was a long time ago, when I saw Burbank Airport from those hills, and the planes, they fly lower than you into the airport. I thought, one day, gotta make a movie here. And the context was shoes, you will see. Okay, here we go.
punish them. That's very nice of you, Travis. Would you like to come in and have some breakfast? Aren't you hungry? We are going to have strawberry waffles. Do you like them? Do you want some? Well, there is hot coffee on the stove if you want some.
Toi.
What'd you do, spit Chinese? I can get you a job at the airport doing that.
Hey, you want to trade these new boots for those old boots?
Yeah, you can wear them.
Thank you.
Okay. Of course, the boots are not exactly made for walking in Los Angeles. But, of course, that was the next challenge, to have somebody walk through the city. And because when you walk, you have sort of encounters that you would never have anywhere else. Because you meet very few people who walk like you do, and it's sort of very existential meetings that you have walking. And as you already guessed, I also love the freeways and billboards. So the next clip is freeway and billboard. That little house from where we shot for 2 weeks, I tried to imagine, and of course Travis was the perfect character for that because he's so much like a child. I tried to imagine what sort of a childhood do you have living in a house overlooking the valley and the Burbank airport and the 5 freeway and all the mist and these beautiful grasses. And so there was sort of, to this scene or to any other scenes we shot there was sort of I didn't really have to think about where to put the camera or what I wanted to tell, because just sort of trying to imagine a child growing up in that place gave us a constant reason to shoot and to be there and to soak this place up as much as possible. Let me show you the freeway aspect of the thing. weiter, Jörg.
You will all be caught with your diapers down. That is a promise. I make you this promise on my mother's head. For right here, today, standing on the very head of my mother, which is now a God-greener, which everybody who wasn't born in a fucking sewer want to know and understand to the very marrow of their bones. They will invade you in your beds. They will snap you from your hot tub. They will pluck you right out of your fancy sports cars. There is nowhere, absolutely nowhere in this godforsaken valley. I'm talking about from the range of my voice right here, clear out to the goddamn Mojave Desert, and beyond that, clear out past Barstow, and everywhere else in the valley, all the way to Arizona. None of that area will be called a safety zone. There will be no safety zone. I can guarantee you the safety zone will be eliminated, eradicated. You will all be extradited to the land of no return. It's a navigation to nowhere. And if you think that's going to be fun, you've got another thing coming. I may be a slime bucket, but believe me, I know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm not crazy. And don't say I didn't warn you. I warned you. I warned all of you.
Thought you were afraid of heights.
No, I'm not afraid of heights. I'm afraid of falling.
Oh, yeah? Well, just don't look down.
Too bad things don't look the same on the ground.
What do you mean?
Well, things are clearer up here. Might clear things up.
Yeah, I had a talk with Ann last night. Yeah, she's pretty upset.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna leave.
What?
I'm leaving.
Hey, I didn't tell you this in order to make you leave. I'm not trying to get rid of you.
Yeah. I always wondered who are these people who are responsible for these billboards. So, I mean, even the characters were sort of written by the city. Travis's brother being the one who makes them, or one of them who makes those billboards. See, it's easy. Making movies is so easy. You just take the city and it tells you all the stories you have to tell. It goes down to the casting. I have actually, maybe York, we leave out the freeway things because it gets too much, sort of. Let's not do the freeway crossing, because it's not. I mean, nobody here is going to build freeways, and that's the one. I mean, that's my favorite freeway crossing. It's where the Antelope Freeway goes up, and we shot that twice. For Paris, Texas, we shot below, and in End of Violence, we shot above it. I couldn't get enough of this freeway. But let's skip it. Let's rather go to another chapter of trying to look at stories, history, and places. And let's go to a more future-oriented subject. And the big title over this chapter here is How Wrong Can You Go? And that's not architects, it's me. I made a movie in 1990 about the year 2000, which is day after tomorrow. And I was so stupid to imagine 4 cities, others too, but I want to show you 4, in 10 years from where we are making it. So the first one, and Jörg, you're going to try to stop on the first white shot, right? The first one was Paris, and Olivier mentioned it. I like Jean Nouvel very much. I think he's a great architect. And Jean had this incredible project called the Infinite, La Tour Sans Fin, the what? The Endless Tower, not infinite. It's a tower that becomes lighter and lighter towards the sky, so you don't really know where it ends. And he and me had a project of making a film about the building of this tower, and then as French politics go, it wasn't built, of course. But in that movie, which we shot in 1990, we had it built because Jean gave me the blueprints, and we had a matte shot of an entrance into Paris that shows his building that unfortunately was never built, but at least it's in the movie. Yeah, here you go. And actually, we don't really have to see the scene afterwards. Oh yeah, go a little bit afterwards. Yeah. You see the arch was already there, and we put the Jean's tower exactly where he was supposed to build it. And as you see, it's a little shame he didn't build it because it would have been fantastic. Let it run a little bit.
All overland access to Paris is restricted to commercial transportation. For private traffic, please use souterrain tunnels. Charges will be applied to your credit card.
Good evening.
How long did I sleep?
500 kilometers.
I haven't slept so long in weeks.
This is as far as I go.
If you're staying in Paris.
That's okay. So one of the ideas was that all traffic in Paris would be underground, and above ground only electric cars, which was extremely difficult to convince the city of Paris to go with that idea and to give us permission to stop the traffic, to have empty streets. Thanks. Hey, and finally, good. And so the tower wasn't built and traffic is worse than ever. Goes to show that we should stay out of these matters as filmmakers. The next one is from my own city, from Berlin, where I also had a nice idea, but didn't work. Can you stop it also on the white shot, Jörg? Yeah. You might recognize the Brandenburg Gate down there, and the new Reichstag built on top of it. They didn't go with my idea. And the hotel where she's staying was the Hotel Adlon, which was rebuilt, but that one they rebuilt like it used to be in the 30s. So yeah, let it run and.
Claire never doubted she would find the man named Trevor again. Even among 20 million people, Berlin was a big city now. You couldn't take a taxi anymore, so she pedaled to that address that she picked up at a payphone in Paris. It turned out that she wasn't alone.
Yeah, that was a cute idea too. We only had bicycles in Berlin. And the third cities I slandered was Beijing. Of course, I had never been there, so and I actually couldn't go with my film crew. So we created Beijing in Berlin. But we had some material from Beijing, and we had an idea that the Tiananmen Square would look like this in today, the year 2000. Can you play this? No. Well, you see, there's a monument to the little guy who stood in front of the tanks. But they didn't go for that idea either. Okay, just let it run. And the rest is...
Look at me, Jean. I'm Claire. What do you expect?
All right. Do you remember the Children's Theatre?
Is in Tokyo.
Yeah. I'll meet you there on Tuesday evening, all right?
Yeah. Just hold it there, Jörg, and don't go somewhere else. Tokyo is one of my favorite cities, and I work there quite often. And I had the pleasure to see some of the stuff that Tadao Ando built in Tokyo and in Osaka. Can I mention that he never went to an architecture school? He was trained as a boxer. I was very impressed. I didn't dare building one of his things in the future, but I again want to show you one little thing, and that's going to lead me to another subject. So maybe you just bear with me and go through the next sequence, and then Jörg, can you stop it then again on the white shot when I tell you?
McPhee-san or Faber-san staying in the hotel? Faber-san. Faber-san, hi.
ファーバー様ですけど、715時にいらっしゃいます。
I think he's saying the 7th floor. I'm not sure. Can you write it, please?
お客様、こちら男性専用です。お客様。
We just missed stopping on the shot. Can you just go back a little bit, just show it a little bit? Just, yeah, here. So, because I just wanted you to see something, because that's what's going to lead into my next thing. thing here. This is, of course, not Tokyo. This is all sorts of cities mixed into one. And I just want to point out that I'm going to use this thing here. Where's this laser pointer? I forgot to see how it works. So, no. Oh. So, this building here, and that's really my point. This building is my favorite building, maybe in the world. And that is Hans Scharoun's library in Berlin. And I shot in there for a long time for Wings of Desire, and would never have a shot at the outside. So finally, in Tokyo in 2000, somebody rebuilt it. So, okay. So you see, none of my architecture ever worked. And I hope, forgive me. But I wanted to segue to this building that I really like very, very, very much, which is Scharoun's library in Berlin. It's really an incredible building because it is made for one purpose, and it's made out of one concern. And normally buildings are not made with such concerns. This building is made with a love of books, and it's made as a building to serve that love and to sort of inspire reading. Now, that's a tall order, you would say. And I don't know what he did, but I think he really made this a place where you can't help but want to read forever and ever and just go back every day and read and read. It's a place that inspires reading, and it's so made from inside out, from its purpose, that on the outside, as you probably saw in Tokyo, you might think it's ugly. But from the inside, it's the most unbelievable place. And when I made this movie, Wings of Desire, and we needed a place for our angels, you know, there's these guardian angels in the movie, and we needed a place for the angels to reside in. It was obvious where else would they want to live but in Scharoun's library. And I would like to show you that clip because it's really entirely, I mean, every angle is a tribute to the building and to its purpose.
In einem Zuhälterschlitten.
War schön laut.
Der tropische Regenwald baut sich in 5 Stockwerken übereinander auf. Die Triebfeder des Wachstums ist der Lichtmangel im Regenwald. Deshalb überzieht den Urwald.
Walter Benjamin kaufte 1921 Paul Klees Aquarell Angeles.
Über sie hinweg ziehen die Kraniche, die und schaut den Kopf fest auf den Hals.
Die seltene Implantation im kurzen interstitiellen Teil geht ebenfalls mit einer Obturatur einher. Gelegentlich ist die Uteruswand abgekürzt. Der Fruchttod erfolgt gewöhnlich im 2. bis 3. Schwangerschaftsmonat, später. Gelegentlich
Vorteil dieses Urteils besteht darin,
überhaupt eine existiert, etwa mundartig 2 plus Wurzel aus a Quadrat 4 minus b. So einfach ist es.
את השמיים ואת הארץ. והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו.
Nächtens will ich mit dem Engel reden, ob er meine Augen anerkennt. Wenn er plötzlich fragte, schaust du Eden? Und ich müsste sagen,
Cassia, the angel of solitudes and tears who shows forth the unity of the kingdom. Erschienen, seist du also ruling prince of
Erzähle, Muse, vom Erzähler, dem an den Weltrand verschlagenen, kindlichen Uralten, und mach an ihm kenntlich den Jedermann. Meine Zuhörer sind mit der Zeit zu Lesern geworden. Und sie sitzen nicht mehr im Kreis, sondern für sich, und einer weiß nichts vom anderen. Ein Greis bin ich mit einer brüchigen Stimme, aber die Erzählung hebt immer noch an aus der Tiefe, und der leicht geöffnete Mund wiederholt sie so mächtig wie mühelos. Eine Liturgie, bei der niemand eingeweiht zu sein braucht, wie die Wörter und Sätze gemeint sind.
Yeah, I wanted to show it to you up to the end because of the appearance of Homer, the ancient storyteller, because I also wanted you to follow the old storyteller across Potsdamer Platz, where he reminisces about what the square used to be like. And of course, as you know, that square of Potsdamer Platz is now again the center. In the film, he was looking for the lost center, and when we shot that scene with the old actor Courtois, who remembered vividly every corner there and every coffee shop where he'd hung out, none of us would have imagined that in our lifetime this would become a public square again, which is almost finished now. I mean, Let me show you this piece too.
Ich kann den Potsdamer Platz nicht finden. Hier, das kann er doch nicht sein. Denn am Potsdamer Platz, da war doch das Café Josti. Nachmittags habe ich mich da unterhalten und dann einen Kaffee getrunken. Das Publikum beobachtet, vorher meine Zigarre geraucht. Bei Löse und Wolf, ein renommiertes Tabakgeschäft. Gleich hier gegenüber. Also, das kann er hier nicht sein. Der Potsdamer Platz. Man trifft keinen, den man fragen kann. Es war ein belebter Platz. Straßenbahnen, Omnibusse mit Pferden und 2 Autos. Meines und das vom Schokoladenhamann. Das Kaufhaus Wertheim war auch hier. Und dann hingen plötzlich Fahnen dort. Der ganze Platz war voll gehängt mit. Und die Leute waren gar nicht mehr freundlich. Und die Polizei auch nicht. Aber ich gebe so lange nicht auf, bis ich den Potsdamer Platz gefunden habe. Wo sind meine Helden? Wo seid ihr, meine Kinder? Wo sind die meinigen? Die Begriffsstutzigen? Die ursprünglichen?
And yeah, this was really a total no man's land. You could just walk around there. The old sofa there was there, we didn't put it there. And there's some paths were leading through it, just where people just took a shortcut. And I want to show you another one of these no man's lands that don't really exist anymore. Actually, none of them exist anymore. And it used to be a station, the Anhalter Bahnhof. Walter Benjamin wrote about this station because it has a funny name, but I don't have to talk much about it because Peter Falk talks about it too. And then we're almost through with the film clips. You done, Jörg? Just a minute. Again, it's difficult. I wish I could tell you the real name of the station, Anhalter Bahnhof, because anhalten means to stand still. So this is really the station that comes to a stop. And it has, in Berlin, actually, as the whole time came to a stop there. And on that square where Damiel finally meets his hero, played by Peter Falk. Ready? Steady? Until 2 hours ago, we only had this film with Japanese subtitles. So we had different key codes for it to excuse Jörg. It's a miracle anyway that he found it. Yeah. So maybe we skip it. Yeah, let's skip it. Go to the very last one, which is the Potsdamer Platz again. only 7 years later. This is from a movie called Far Away So Close, and the only reason to make this movie is, at the time, to show the city that didn't exist anymore one more time the way it was now. And we shot on lots of these places where we had shot for Wings of Desire, but nothing was there anymore. So it's like a revisiting a different, but the planet's turned into a different planet. Let's have a look at that. I can go through a question in the meantime. Oh, no.
И миг по сравнению с вечностью. Не зная лучше или хуже, что человек не знает свою судьбу, думаю, ее лучше, потому что он тогда всю жизнь ищет и думает, в чем же смысл бытия. Потому что вот передо мной слова, которые меня просто поражают. Слова нашего соотечественника Федора Тютчева, поэта и дипломата. Единство возвестил оракул наших дней, быть может, спаяно железом лишь и кровью. Но мы попробуем спаять его любовью. А там увидим, что прочней. Я убежден, на крови нельзя построить надежный мир. На согласии можно. Мы должны, люди и политики, и философы, и актеры, и рабочие, и крестьяне, и представители всех религий согласиться с этим. Если мы согласимся в этом, все остальное мы решим.
Ein jegliches hat seine Zeit. Und alles Vorhaben unter dem Himmel hat seine Stunde. Geboren werden hat seine Zeit. Sterben hat seine Zeit. Töten hat seine Zeit. Heilen hat seine Zeit. Weinen hat seine Zeit. Lachen hat seine Zeit. Suchen hat seine Zeit. Schweigen hat seine Zeit. Reden hat seine Zeit. Lieben hat seine Zeit.
Yeah. For a little while, as you saw there, Potsdamer Platz was the most amazing square because it didn't belong to anybody. Nobody knew who it belonged to. So for a number of years, anybody could just camp there, live there. There were these trailer cities. People built gardens. It was the most amazing place. But that one too doesn't exist anymore. I wish I could have shown you another film, but I didn't have it on laser, that we shot there another 5 years later. But let me come back to what I was saying in the beginning. How do you build houses and movies? I mean, that's a stupid question. What they have in common, how do you get to that? You know better what materials you use and what materials and technology you use to create space. My materials are obviously different from yours and I need a different structure, but I'm not really talking about structure. It's not like Gordon in the beginning of State of Things when he talked about the walls and Friedrich when he talked about the space between the people, because they both didn't get it. What I'm really more interested in is what's in between the walls. And How do people enter and live in a house so they're at home? And how do they enter and live in movies or in stories so they're at home and feel welcome and safe in the movie as if it was their home? For a little moment, I want to leave the analogy of houses and movies behind and ask you to look at books, a novel or a poem. Just imagine you're reading. So, how do you read? What is it that makes the story yours so that you can actually enter it? You realize that it's not just what is written there, it's actually what is not written. And that what's not written is that what you have to fill in. And it's actually the space in between the words that lets you into the words. A novel you have to read in between the lines to enter it, because in between the lines is where your imagination enters. And that's why you become the co-author of it. I'm really hoping I can pull these all together here. I'm relying on your instinct as well as on mine to read between my lines as well. So you certainly know the expression wall to wall. It means that everything is covered and there's no hole and everything just planned. Movies can be wall to wall. They can be closed circuits, and what you see is what you get. There's no cracks in those walls and there's no space between the images. You're not really wanted in, or you're not even allowed in, because anyway you stay out and you consume and you digest and then you forget. I don't mean that so negative, because I think you can get involved and cry and feel fear and hate or whatever, but it's not actually coming from you. It's delivered to you and you don't have to add a thing, it's ready-made. On the other hand, you know that the great books that formed your own childhood and the movies that shaped your imagination, they were not wall to wall, because otherwise you would have forgotten them. You helped create them yourselves because you invested yourself. They made you creative. Movies can do that too. They can actually open you up to the world, and they can make you see better, and they can make you see different. And maybe already you guess what I'm getting at here. And what I'm suggesting that is that architecture does just that. Some of it lets you in and holds you and your dreams safe and uncovers the story of a certain place. It helps you create your own story and contribute to his story or her story. It makes you belong to the place and into the world. And I guess that's very often up to you to decide whether it's going to be wall to wall or if you're going to leave cracks. The city of Berlin, and that's why I want you to see these pieces, and also the one that we didn't see. The city of Berlin was really incredible when it had all these no man's lands, and when it really showed its wounds and its history, and when you could see like the inside of houses that you never see, because in most cities houses are built next to each other, and the wall that divides one house from the next you never see. I don't think in Paris you can ever see it because it's all filled. In Berlin you saw the insides of the houses, like their scar tissue. I was once in the city of Brasilia, and you might know how totally planned and structured and sort of what an artificial city dream of the 50s that was. And I tell you, the only interesting places in the city I found were under the bridges and overpasses, because that's where the architect had forgotten to do something. That's where the fantasy and the imagination of these people moved. The markets, all the places where you could talk, where music was played, everything happened under those tiny spaces under bridges, because there was no other space for it. So what I'm getting at is that the empty spot, what you don't plan and build, the unfulfilled, is that's what's between the lines, or in a movie between the images. That's where a film, if I speak for what I'm doing, enters people's existence and has a chance to change it. And it's those empty spots and the undetermined areas that can make a good or a beautiful film into a necessary one. And I think, I dare to think that this is very similar with what you're doing. What makes a good or interesting or even beautiful building into one that actually builds history and contributes to the stories of the people living there, and that turns that building into a necessary one. I think it's everything, it's between the walls. There's of course no recipe for implanting such a space between the lines, and there is no, I don't really want to show anything anymore. Thank you for the effort. There is no formula. I think it's much more of an attitude or a need. And I suggest that it's the same in movies and in architecture. So what I'm really suggesting is to think stories and history first and not walls. And to remember that the best word in a poem is always the one that remains unsaid. Thank you very much. Thank you also, Jörg. And I'm happy to announce that I got a question. I'm really thankful to that person. What is the relationship between what a film is about, the film's subject and its story? How do you find an appropriate stay for a given subject? It seems buildings can have subject or be about something, but can't have story. I got that pretty much in the beginning, so I somehow feel that I said something about this in between, which is that I really don't believe into carrying stories into buildings and places. I really believe in finding the story that is already there and that they want to tell. I mean, I cannot pass, like I travel a lot. You come to a city where you've never been before or a long time ago. You walk around and you see a house, and I just cannot, by the very sight of a building, I cannot help wanting to tell a story that starts in that building. And you see a window, and you see somebody pass by the window, and I think immediately, that is the beginning of a movie that you then would have to find can only take place in that building and in these streets around. And actually, that's how I make movies. I have to give credit to a lot of buildings, and I hope I did in between. Yeah, that's a regret I have that I couldn't show you anything, because there is an entire movie with just mixing it, shot in one single place here in downtown Los Angeles. The place suggested it. It's the perfect example for what I was just trying to say. The place suggested a story, not to me, but to a good friend of mine who is sort of similarly open to suggestions. And that is a singer, Bono from U2. 10 years ago, he shot a rock video on the roof of a downtown hotel, the Roslyn. It's now called the Frontier. It's on 5th and Main. And he was very impressed with that place. And you see how the alleys in downtown Los Angeles are very small. And if you're on top of a building that's the same height, you really can, if you jump, you could jump easily to the roof of the next building. At least you think it, because it's, 10 feet. Anybody can jump 10 feet. So Bono and Edge had a bet going if one of them would jump. And of course, fortunately, they didn't. But it was the place, the crack between these two buildings, the alley, suggested a story of somebody who wanted to jump. And he then got to know the hotel a little bit and investigated a little bit. And it started a story in his head about a young man living in that hotel. Now that is one of these hotels. It's not a fancy place, don't get me wrong. It used to be. It was built around the turn of the century, and for a while it was the highest building in the city. Beautiful 20-floor building, brownstone. It had a presidential suite, and the last president who actually lived there was Eisenhower, and some of other ones before. And now it's one of these places that you find in many American cities after the Reagan administration, at least, where a lot of people who used to be on welfare now end up because they have nothing to support them anymore. So there's a lot of old and forgotten people, a lot of people who are either slightly crazy or very crazy and who really belong into some sort of other institution or into a context where they're taking place. So if there's a lot of alcohol, drugs, it's one of those places. So he introduced me to the place, and I was also very fascinated by the place, and I thought it was such a microcosm and such an extraordinary place to imagine a story in that would go completely against what you would think such a place would suggest. So we imagined a love story that would take place there. And we shot the entire film inside the hotel and just the 4 streets around it. Just one block. And the film really belongs to that block. We never left it. Wish I could show you something, but I only have material from the Avid, and that looks so lousy that I didn't want to show. I think it's probably different in different countries. In my own country, in Germany, there is a certain attitude towards history, which is typically German, of course, which is to forget and to quickly cover up history. So the war damaged a lot of Berlin and East Berlin, but the bigger damage was done in the 50s and 60s. The bigger damage to tear down anything that was sort of half destroyed, just tear it down. I mean, even like the wall. I'm not saying I wish the wall was still there, but I thought it was such an incredible monument that I felt belonged to not just the Berliners or the Germans, but to mankind, that I think we owed it to at least keep a piece of it. You wouldn't find a trace of it. At this moment in Berlin, and that's the German attitude towards history, is to eradicate it. You would not know anymore where it was, except that you see it in the people, but not anymore in the city itself. Of course, the fact that some cities disappeared and were built up again, like Dresden or so, or a city where I grew up when I was a kid, Düsseldorf, the fact that these cities were practically erased and then rebuilt creates a different sense of history than in countries where never anything got disturbed, like in Switzerland, for instance, or in America. I think it changes a certain perspective on what's, but then again, the result is the same. The result is the same. I mean, in the end, I mean, the interest and what is changing cities today is the same in America as in Europe. I really think it's a terrible shame that Berlin has not kept on any of its wounds and none of the empty spaces, that everything was filled. And I guess you would have done that in America just as well. If it's empty, it needs to be filled. And Berlin was incredible because of the empty spaces. You wouldn't find one anymore at all. Yeah. They're entirely caused by something else, yeah. It's not history, huh? I mean, it is history, but a different form of history. Huh? It's not a war.
When you looked at a city, did you always try to conjure up what it was in the past and also project into the future what it might be? Because you seem to be interested in the future very much as well as the past. But do you have an imagination that stretches in time like that?
Well, you see, you've seen how wrong I've been. I like the future for one simple reason. I think projecting yourself into the future makes you understand the present a little better. And if you look at science fiction movies, the fun is to know when they were made, because they really always tell you about the year and the times that they were made, much more than about the future. And I think that's why I like science fiction, because it's very insightful into the times when they were made. And it gives you, I mean, as a storyteller, it gives you a certain leeway and a certain liberty. To dream up the future of a certain place is really extremely compelling, I must say. Actually, the $1 Million Hotel in between was a science fiction film, and appropriately called $1 Billion Hotel. We went with the inflation, and it was supposed to take place in 2050. Same place where the present hotel is, they built another hotel in 50 years from now, which was sort of a high-tech hotel, completely interactive, like the future of what a hotel could be in 30, 40, 50 years. I think it's exciting because you have more space between the lines than today. You can you have wider spaces between the lines and between the images, because almost at any given moment you can sort of project yourself into it and sort of go on with your own imagination what things could turn out and how people will live in 10 years. I think it makes it sort of creates bigger cracks. I like that. I'm sorry, I didn't understand you. How technology is changing the role of being a digital technology. How digital technology, for those who didn't understand, is changing the role of a filmmaker. I tend to think that we, at this very moment, like at the end of this 20th century, in my craft and industry, the filmmaking industry, we go through a period of transition that is very similar, like going from the silent to the talkies. And at the time, silent films were something extremely elaborate, amazingly beautiful. I mean, if you see a film like Abel Gance's Napoleon, which is made at the end, in the middle of the 20s, I don't think you can find a film today that is visually more compelling. And then came the sound film, and films for a number of years were very rigid, almost too stupid to be true. It was a dramatic recession in terms of language and possibilities. And of course, there were people who said that it's the death of movies, which wasn't true. In the end, it led to a quantum leap for movies. And I think today is about the same. A lot of the movies that are made with digital means today are still a little rigid again, and it's sometimes even embarrassing. And you remember 2001, and you wonder why nobody who's making science fiction films today can be remotely as inventive as somebody who didn't even know the word digital. But then you can also imagine that in another few years, this technology will become much more subtle and fluid, and actually will be a similar quantum leap. And actually, I very much believe that it will give us tools and possibilities that at this moment we can't even think of and dream of, and that it will enrich the whole catalog of filmmaking enormously, just tremendously. I'm looking forward to it. And as I said, it's a transition, and sometimes you sit there and you're embarrassed because it's worse than what we had before. It's like when CDs came, nobody could tell me that that was a better sound. But everybody said, oh yeah, it's great, CDs. And nobody bought vinyl anymore, but everybody who really listened knew it was so much better. And it's the same. I mean, a lot of the digital technology today is embarrassing, but it'll get there and it'll be fantastic. Research was one visit and a peep show. And that didn't lead to much except for the discovery of the two-way mirror. And the discovery of the two-way mirror was made the scene. The idea that you could watch somebody but couldn't be seen. And that's what actually then influenced the writing of the entire scene. You have to imagine that we had a script, Sam Shepard and I wrote a script, and we had purposely written it to the middle. If you know the story, this man who has lost his memory, or a lot of it, and sort of catatonic, comes back out of nowhere, out of the desert, to find the little boy and the woman again that he loved. And he does find the boy, and together with the boy, he then sets out to find the boy's mother, his wife, former wife. So, and we had written the story up to the moment where they leave together. And then we had left it open. We purposely did not, when we started shooting, didn't have a complete script. We had half a script. Because we figured it would be so much better to start telling the story and find out about these people and then sort of really know how that would then could possibly happen. We felt if we wrote it from beginning to end, there was almost no more point to making it. So, and then unfortunately, Sam, as we were shooting the film, because we were delayed, had to leave me. So I got through half of the film, and then I was sitting there and I had no more writer and no more script. And it all came to a grinding halt. And we stayed in a motel in Los Angeles for 2 weeks without a script, and I then came up with that peep show concept and the idea of you could talk to each other but not see each other. And that idea of a place like this, of a room like this, sort of inspired Sam then to write the ending. And of course, there was no such place that existed. In our story, we call it the Keyhole Club, because actually in Houston, Texas, I found a keyhole club, but I didn't go inside. It was not appropriate for us, but the name was good. And we then built this little thing with these little cubicles with a two-way mirror, and actually shot it with such a two-way mirror. So Nastasia actually never saw Harry Dean, and he always saw her. And then we found out that if you turned out the light in one room and turned up the light in the other, it all of a sudden turned around and you could see the other. So that mirror did everything we needed to find for our story. That simple mirror that you can put on any bathroom if you want. And yeah. What was the very beginning of it? I understand this. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. That happened, that's a film that was made in '95 because these film buffs in Lyon found one of the original cameras by the Lumiere brothers, made it work. It was one of the first series of cameras. 20 were built, I think, of this camera. They found one, made it work, had identical film stock remade with the same sprockets, and then gave that camera with one roll of film to 20 filmmakers, and everybody could shoot under the conditions of the Lumiere brothers just 100 years later. And the conditions were, and that was the rule of the game, a no pan, because they didn't do that, no stop, and that once you started rolling, it was a hand cranker, of course, you had to go till the end. No artificial light. Of course, no sound. That thing made a lot of noise. And I shot a scene with Bruno Ganz and Otto Sander on the rooftop of the library, Sharon's library. I mean, I was given the choice to do one shot, 55 seconds, choose where on earth